Legal Terminology Module. There are 7 lessons with their corresponding desired objectives to be achieved by participants within this module. At the end of these short lessons, participants should have gained a basic understanding of the meaning and usage of legal terms in common legal situations and functions. Of course, we have to have a disclaimer, right? All the information provided in these short lessons is publicly available and provides interpreters working in the legal field with an understanding of basic legalese and other commonly heard terms. This information is not intended to be construed as legal advice. Participants will also be provided resources to complete the individual assignments and are encouraged to use the same to enhance their personal glossaries by incorporating the legal terminology used in these lessons so they can interpret and/or translate them correctly into their working languages. Lesson 3. Common Civil Courts Specific Terms. The objective here is for participants to gain a basic understanding of commonly used English legal terms in civil courts and how to conduct effective research to interpret or translate them into other working language. As seen on this slide, in the 50 states, the District of Columbia, Puerto Rico, and Guam reported a total of 84.2 million incoming cases for 2016, or about 2.1 million fewer cases than were reported for 2015, which is not shown. Just over half of all 2016 cases, 53%, were reported in the traffic violations category. These actions typically consume far fewer judicial and court resources than the remaining 4 categories of criminal, 21%, civil, 18%, domestic relations, 6%, and juvenile, less than 2%. After traffic violations and criminal cases, the third most reported cases in 2016 in the U.S. were the civil ones, with an 18% reporting indicator. Obviously, this reiterates the need for interpreters to have an excellent command of the English legal terminology because of the terms they will encounter during civil proceedings. Remember, civil cases usually involve private disputes between persons or organizations. A civil case begins when a person or entity, such as a corporation or the government, called a plaintiff, claims that another person or entity, the defendant, has failed to carry out a legal duty owed to the plaintiff. Both the plaintiff and the defendant are also referred to as parties or litigants. The plaintiff may ask the court to tell the defendant to fulfill the duty or make compensation for the harm done, or both. Legal duties include respecting rights established under the Constitution or under federal or state law. Private cases are brought by one person, the plaintiff, against another person or entity, defendant or respondent. The punishment is usually money or doing or not doing something. No prison or jail time. Types of private cases usually involve situations regarding family, traffic, temporary restraining orders or injunctions, and juvenile matters. They will also involve matters dealing with children, probate, commitment, adult protection, and small claims. As common as these English terms may sound, and even if you think they are not legalese per se, remember that as the interpreter, you will be expected to render them accurately into your working language. Moving on, we can look specifically at family court cases, which involve some type of relationship between 2 or more people, as well as the care and guardianship of children and adults who are unable to care for themselves. The cases heard by family law courts vary greatly, but the most common revolve around the termination of a marriage or romantic relationship and child custody. When interpreting in family cases, interpreters can encounter the following terms: divorce, child support enforcement, child custody and placement disputes, paternity. Cases heard by the juvenile court are also considered civil cases. When interpreting in juvenile court cases, interpreters can encounter the following terms: delinquency, cases involving juveniles 10 years or older who have violated state or federal criminal law. Child abuse and neglect, cases involving children who are victims of child abuse or neglect, includes even unborn children. TPR, or termination of parental rights, cases where the courts seek to end a parent's right to a child permanently because the parent is unable or unwilling to take care of the child. Other kinds of civil cases where interpreters will encounter English legal terms would be non-criminal traffic cases, TROs, temporary restraining orders, are, as the name suggests, non-permanent court orders that are effective for the period of time between when an injunction filing occurs and the actual hearing takes place. Injunctions. Injunctions are court instructions that either forbid someone from doing something or order them to do something. Probate court, also called orphans court in some states, hears civil cases as well. Among this category, interpreters can encounter the following cases with their corresponding terms. When interpreting in probate court cases, interpreters can encounter the following terms: validation of wills and distribution of assets after a person is deceased, adoption, which is the process whereby a person assumes the parenting of another, usually a child, from that person's biological or legal parents, and in doing so, permanently transfers all rights and responsibilities along with filiation from the biological parent or parents. Filiation is the adjudication of paternity. Guardianships, the appointment of a person to make medical and/or financial decisions for someone who is unable. Before we continue learning more legal terms, spend some time researching on the internet and identify a legal equivalent in your working language for at least 25 of the more than 70 terms previously discussed in this lesson. Use the handout 3A provided to write them down. Here are some more commonly used legal terms in civil procedures that interpreters will hear. A power of attorney is the formal authorization of a person to act in the interest of another person. A summons is a notice to a defendant that he or she has been sued or charged with a crime and is required to appear in court. A lawsuit. Any proceeding by one person or persons against another in a court of law. Because people will often shorten lawsuit and say suit instead, always double check that the context is referring to the legal action and not the set of articles of clothing or any of its other meanings. The abatement of an action is a lawsuit which has been set aside and ended. Order. This is the direction of a court or judge normally made or entered in writing and not included in a judgment, which determines some point or directs some step in the proceedings. In Lesson 3, the key points to remember are: there are English legal terms and phrases that are commonly used in civil proceedings. Interpreters are expected to not only understand what the English legal term means, but also be able to render said term or phrase into their working language. Individual activity. Identify a legal equivalent in your working language for the following 18 statements. Conduct any needed research, including internet searches. Use handout 3B provided to write them down. End of lesson 3.